Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12:02 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm Max. That's Colborn. Renee's below me. Daim is off to the right. Welcome to your MOCA Weekly Town Hall. We're happy to be back. We're happy to have you. And yeah, how's everyone doing?
Not too bad.
Colborn, you doing all right? Renee, doing all right?
Yeah, catching up. I'm trying to find where the stream is on X.
Yeah,
so
I was noticing.
Share it.
I can only find it by clicking on the little circle on our name and our profile. So I wonder if Twitter updated something, because we definitely have our Twitter permissions open.
Interesting. So I can't retweet it anymore.
Classic. Well, we have two views.
Another brilliant change.
Yeah, another fantastic change.
2 views. We have 921 unread messages, apparently, or notifications.
No.
That's what it says in my bar here.
No.
I'm sure every one of those is a precious human interaction waiting to be acknowledged.
Maybe that's my Twitter. This is my Twitter. But whatever.
See, that makes more sense.
Balloons.
Well, we're going to end up having this conversation for an audience of like 3 or 4, and then we'll end up just going back to Discord. I mean, this is honestly, like, over the past few weeks, I know you guys did the town hall in Discord as opposed to on Twitter, but like, it does seem like that platform is just systematically trying to like do away with anything organic or real or interesting. I don't really know what the whole point of that platform is at this point, other than just like
propaganda.
Yeah, emulate TikTok, but with written word. Like, it's not for anything. But maybe that's neither here nor there. We're happy to have everyone here who's here. And why don't we jump in, continuing the discussion we were just having before this stream started, which I think began with Colborn saying that in 6 months, every system that we know and love is going to be fundamentally changed. Did I have that right? That paraphrase?
Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, can you say a bit more about that?
I think we're about to enter the era of like exponential slop. If we're starting to see the emergence of what was it? Was it this version of Claude that they said was the first version of Claude in which the AI helped to build Claude? So we're seeing the knowledge start to iterate and build and train and grow on itself, which means we are in for exponentiation. And I think it begins, and we've like, I have been totally offline, so I could be speaking. I'm speaking really from just bits and pieces. But I think as more permissions are granted and as more agentic entities begin to access traditional means of communication like WhatsApp, like messaging, we're just going to see exponential spam. And I think we'll be so flooded as to be virtually just overwhelmed.
I mean, I see social media. Yeah, for sure. But I feel like this might be taking us down the road of implementing sort of the, dare I say, the obvious solution to spam, which is like microtransaction costs. Because if suddenly emails cost 1 cent to send, that makes no difference to you and I, but suddenly it makes sending 1 million cold calls, spam emails cost actual money. And I mean, that could obviously be applied to anything from phone calls to text messages, which of course used to cost, but nowadays are mostly included with plans and stuff. But
I mean, do you have any hope that like the systems in place are going to update themselves or upgrade themselves like quick enough that they're going to be able to deal? Like the problem is that like the AI systems and the AI development is happening way quicker than any kind of other equivalent industry or like guardrail industry is able to catch up. Like these things it'll be months and months and months before any kind of guardrails are put in place on like, you know, a new Claude model that's able to like kind of freely access messaging services. And by then there'll be another model that is doing it more quickly and more naturally. And
but that's why the make stuff cost approach is in a sense, I think, foolproof, because that doesn't depend on technical stuff. If you can send somebody an email without being charged, a cent, then a million emails are going to cost, I don't want to do the math, but whatever they cost, and there's no getting around that, no matter how clever your tech. Now, it might take a while to implement, but like once stuff like that is implemented, that's no longer a technological arms race.
Well,
that's now, are you willing to waste your money? Question.
It's going to end up being KYC, right? Because you need to have some way to like not alienate real people while still putting these guardrails in place. So everything is going to be about like, well, can you verify your identity with like a government issued license or a passport or something, or like some kind of social security number? I mean, maybe not specifically a social security number, but some kind of like centrally distributed identification mechanism will be now your way to access anything internet, because I don't see it. Yeah, WorldCoin, honestly. I can certainly see something like that happening. That was a Sam Altman product, was it not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that happening too, but that I feel like is, a government problem, right? Like so many countries, things are already veering in that direction, and if it happens because of this, I feel like that's going to be more the excuse used to continue in the direction that they're already trying to march us towards. Not that makes a difference in the end, but
I mean, I think just 100% is going off the rails. I think the equivalent that we know would be kind of the judicial system trying to keep pace with technology, which we don't see happening, and just kind of authoritarian overstep of governments. There's no time for balance of powers, and we're just going to see everything breaking in real time, and we're not going to be able to patch it quick enough. So like everything is antiquated and is going to have to be built from scratch.
It does kind of feel like that, right? It's like a subway system. Like it's almost like, I just came back from Japan, and one of the things that everybody talks about when they go to Japan, I'm sure it applies to the other, large Asian countries with like great public transit service, but like the trains are new, they're clean, they're fresh, they are quiet, and they like move very quickly and very predictably. Come back to New York, and the subways are disgusting, and they're slow, and they're always delayed. And part of the problem is that we created the subway system in New York in the late 1800s, and retrofitting is always more expensive than just, again, building from the ground up, right? When you're building a subway system starting in the 90s, not the 90s, the 50s or the mid 1900s, as happened in Japan, you're able to use a lot more modern technology, and you're able to like use that technology to more comfortably retrofit modernity on top of the original system. And yeah, I wonder if the systems that we have in place are equipped to even have kind of new versions of, I don't know, new frameworks that can handle like an agentic ecosystem on top of them, or like you say, whether we'll need to just like basically have like new email, new messaging services, new kind of like social media. Like, will everything have to be new to deal with the fact that, agentic personalities outnumber human personalities by a 10 or 100 to 1 metric? Because otherwise the internet becomes completely unusable, right? Reddit becomes completely unusable because you're having, one human comment for every 50,000 agentic comments.
Yeah.
A stock trading needs to be completely different, because for every one human stock trade that's being made, there's 100,000 high frequency agentic stock trades being made. So how do
that's already the case.
Yeah, but that's been the case with high frequency trading forever. But now it's like, again, every system we have in place just becomes exponentially harder to control, right? So even though, today, like you said, that's the case with high frequency trading, where there's just tons and tons of movement happening in the margins at every moment. Whatever that number is today, if it's 100,000 trades a second, that just 10x's, 100x's becomes way harder to deal with as any kind of human entity.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, let's think about like real quick, because I think there's a level above that of and questioning what actually is going to be valuable. You know, we have a company like Unity that is a, you know, multi-billion-dollar company getting cut in half in the last 2 days, right? We've seen like unprecedented volatility across some of the biggest assets in the world and companies in the world because, for example, Google launched whatever world building platform it has based on AI. So if Google can just replicate a multi-billion-dollar company and has the distribution to go further and faster than Unity, yes. Matt Kane in the chat, good to see you. I've actually been thinking a lot about Matt Kane.
we're all always thinking about Matt Kane.
I know, it's so interesting. Matt Kane is very interesting. But
I also think it might be a weird saving grace that a lot of this, you know, stuff that we're worrying about, you know, is going to be something that has like a bottom line impact on plenty of you know, corporations, some of which are going to be, you know, large international multi-billion-dollar corporations, and you know, thus significantly better equipped to figure some of this stuff out sooner rather than later than, you know, I don't know, local mom and pop shops and, you know, whatever else might be able to do so.
I mean, but like software in general is now instantly replicable. You know, so cute, like CRM system, Salesforce, you can build your own Salesforce internally in half a day. You can build your own CRM. You can tell it what to track. It's gonna be, you know, so back to the question, like what is actually valuable? Hardware is valuable. Energy seems like it's gonna be valuable. Distribution, how you get product to people. 30
years probably of this slow movement of value from the physical world out to the digital world. And it seems like whatever is happening in the clutter of the digital world is going to send kind of value back out in the physical world. My first thought is like carpentry, right? Like being able to make things, right? And the high value placed on making artisan goods, right? Things that can't just be quickly mass produced, you know,
or counting pigeons.
Sure, counting pigeons, HVAC systems, like electrical engineering, things that can't be handled easily. As a great example, this thing happened this morning, or this news kind of spread around Twitter this morning that Waymo cars in Atlanta, Waymo was hiring DoorDash drivers at like $11 a task to close the doors of Waymo cars that were left open because they're using one of their fleet is a Jaguar model that doesn't have auto closing doors. So people are just leaving the doors either open or not fully closed, and the cars can't function, right? So now the value is going, it probably costs as much as a ride itself, but the value is now moving from the car itself to management of the autonomous vehicle, you know, something that like without a body and quick movement, like literally can't be done.
Wasn't it also revealed that these autonomous cars are being driven remotely from the Philippines by people?
I don't know, but that sounds like a good idea.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So the autonomous cars aren't autonomous, and they need local food delivery drivers to close their doors. Like that's hilarious.
I want to just point to what Emotional, also shout out Emotional, said. I've built my own map editor and admin backend to manage a game of vibe code with 60 players. You can literally do anything. You just need to be creative in the sense of what do I need to do myself instead. Yeah. And yeah, like it's I think that's a great thing to bring up because it's not just like agents creating things, it's also creating things and, you know, plugging kind of more activity into the digital world. It's also the ease by which people who would not otherwise have, I'm not talking about you Emotional, but just like myself, right? I would have never had the tools to create a functional game even a year ago. And probably if I put some elbow grease into it, I could create something halfway functional in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. if I could get like Claude code running on my system, like, so it's
I mean,
not
I
just-
can
yeah,
I can add to that even as someone who does have halfway reasonable coding skills,
you
the,
undersell yourself.
the AI factor is like a force multiplier. Now, I think people are always quick to point out, but I don't know, bugs and maintainability and all that. And I suspect if I were writing like enterprise grade code for doing important shit that can go wrong, otherwise billions will be lost, it might be a different situation. But certainly for making my own local tools, for experimenting with things, for making games even, like it really gets you to a point where if you want, you can even just take several huge steps back and honestly take sort of a game flow and like logic flow, high level strategic perspective of the game, and let the AI handle the details.
Completely. There's always going to be a place for like the highest level functioning products, right? There's always going to be a place, even if like, high quality games flood the market and they're mostly kind of like agentically created. There's always going to be a place for a Grand Theft Auto 6, right? Something that's like perfect in all the nitty gritty details. And it's not like I think the high end of almost everything will kind of remain untouched. It's kind of everything that's like 90th percentile and down that's going to be so flooded, right? There's always going to be the same thing with like furniture, just to continue the carpentry example, right? That you can buy from Wayfair or Amazon or Walmart, like solid, well-made, if not that interesting furniture that's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. But if you want to, jump that 90 percentile into the 99th percentile and get like something that's really artisan, really creative, really well-made, using really excellent materials, like that will always have kind of some value, some separate value in the marketplace from whatever's happening. And I imagine that's going to be the same case with every kind of like digital product. There's always going to be a place for the highest functioning, the most secure, the most human touched. But there's going to be, 100 competitors, 1,000 competitors to every high level product that are going to cost substantially less. And you're going to sacrifice some things that, either are expected today and are going to be seen as luxuries tomorrow, whether that's, a UI choice, whether that's bugginess, whether that's security, etc. And I think plenty of people will probably make that bargain for the sake of cost.
For sure. Yeah, and I think I don't know, the one sort of caveat I would add to this, I still feel like there's sort of a partially hidden factor where like all the amazing successes that AI has are in areas that are sort of heavily and sometimes even like strategically trained on or even overtrained on. And I think, we're probably eventually going to get to a point where we're going to start to sort of find some of the seams or some of the gaps in that training, which could, of course, always be filled and dealt with. But I think it's one of those things where, if your gap is that your current LLM model can't pass the US bar exams yet, that's probably A, fairly easy to train on, and B, there's probably a profit motive to do so.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, eventually we'll get to a point where some of the seams that sort of start to come out, might turn out to be things that are neither super easy to train on, and there might not be a huge profit motive to do so. And I sort of expect that, that stuff might become, might become a source of things for people to to reorient their skills and efforts towards
Mm.
not as things that AI could never overcome, but okay, so well, this niche is seeming pretty safe because it still needs to be done, and yet it's not a low-hanging enough fruit for any of the big AI companies to give a shit about it today, tomorrow, or probably even a year from now. That's my theory.
Pretty well built theory. It still feels like though we're grasping at straws to some extent. Like it feels like what we've been doing in crypto art for the past 4 years, what people do with like NFT prices and just like theory crafting. Essentially, this is the way that things will probably go based on the available information. But of course, the available information changes week to week. Even what I was just saying before, like maybe within a year, a 99th percentile product is easily accessible to everyone because these agentic ecosystems have learned, or these agentic actors have learned so quickly what it means, like, and what's necessary to vault something into the highest level of quality that nothing exists in the 90th percentile or below. Everything is 99th percentile because everything's become so standardized in like the logic system of these neural networks that like there is no quality loss, which of course is the fear for everything, right? That like,
well, I mean, the promise, right, is that any innovation, even innovation at the margin, immediately gets baked into the system and put into all of the new product, right?
Yeah.
So you can only hope to maybe contribute some idea at the margin, but then everything from that moment on already uses that innovation moving forward, which is how you get these crazy exponential returns.
It's that's been happening in tech, I think, for 15 years, right? I even going back to like, I remember when Instagram copied Snapchat stories, and it was just kind of like, oh, this before Meta was Meta, but like Facebook is just going to copy everything that works in every other social media platform. They're just going to take things and they're just going to run with them. And that was kind of like seen as a knock on Zuckerberg and a knock on Facebook. And yet then the innovation of stories became kind of standardized everywhere. And now it's just kind of something that exists across platform. It's no longer a differentiating factor for something like Snapchat. So it's just the speed at which that happens now can be instantaneous. And then the speed of deployment can be instantaneous.
So in that world, the only thing that matters is distribution. And it seems like, companies like Google, Snapchat, well, not even really Snapchat, but Google, Meta have monopolies on distribution.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, because they can change. That's how things get distributed, and they can change their own distribution mechanism to self-benefit. Right. We can even just look at like the politicization of Twitter. Right. And
who cares about anything like a patent or any sort of registration? It won't really matter. Maybe, if you have any sort of innovation, you get paid, but it doesn't really feel like that.
Yeah, but you get paid with what time scale, right? Okay, so I patent some kind of like digital innovation and I release a product. It gets immediately stolen for lack of a better word, by every agentic operating system like that. And suddenly I am now like waiting for my patent to clear and then trying to sue for damages the entire digital ecosystem writ large. Like, okay, and then
the next day somebody else invents something else that supersedes that. So maybe you've had a day of innovation gain, but it's not.
And I'm waiting 12 years to get payment back for this thing, and by that point we're living in a fundamentally different world. So
but honestly, I wonder if in the long term that kind of a new reality might actually benefit people at large more than not. Like we like to think of this situation as little guy comes up with a brilliant idea that revolutionizes the world and might need a big company to make it into reality, but should still get paid because it's their idea. But like honestly, I feel like probably 90 to 99% of the time these days, it's almost certainly exactly the opposite, where a large international multi-billion-dollar company comes up with an idea that probably anybody could have come up with, six their patent lawyer on it, and nobody else can do it for what is it, 25 years, 30 years, 60 years, whatever it is.
Mhm.
So maybe that's a system that will be better off for for it falling.
Yeah, you're gonna obviously, I think, have to have some sort of UBI coverage, right? There's going to be massive amounts of abundance being created. It's gonna have to filter, so like tech companies on top, there's gonna have to be some form of centralized government that is helping to distribute this into some form of UBI.
I guess my question comes down to like, will
That
there
sounds
be-
scary, living in North America.
Oh yeah, I mean, can you trust all of the previous institutions and all its historical knowledge to? I mean, it sounds scary to be living anywhere.
I just don't know if these things are going to be valued. I truly don't. I mean, like, the idea of abundance, I hear the argument, but I'm not like, one thing that I feel like gets overlooked in a lot of the AI discussions is that like OpenAI is deeply unprofitable, right? OpenAI and the product that it, has launched to the masses across enterprise and personal use, that company is still barely approaching $20 billion in valuation or in revenue, right? And I think what I just saw the other day, they're operating at like $140 billion loss like this coming year. They have 800 million active daily users or weekly users. Or I'm not. They have something like 800 million.
But the old, you can't apply any old metric, right? The capitalism as you know it, how things will function, will cease to exist.
But are we going to value these systems like economically? Are the masses of people going to pay for these systems? Are they going to pay for the things that are being created?
It's going to be given to them for free by Google, Meta for their data. Right,
and I'm not sure OpenAI or Anthropic is where the future is ultimately, even as they're kind of looking like they're on top still.
You have to think similar to the innovation, the nuclear weapons. Right, we are in a global arms race to achieve artificial superintelligence against probably China as the competitor. We're flat out losing. So it has to be like throw everything at it right now if we're gonna have any sort of, like ability to direct or control the future.
I don't disagree with that, and I think I have said again and again in the newsletter at least that like that's my general operating principle for making sense of everything that's happening here, is that this is existential for the Western bloc, and if you want to call it the Chinese bloc, the Eastern bloc, but either way, everything being thrown at these systems is kind of the way that this is going. All the money, all the political firepower, etc. I will just say, however, that like at a certain point, if we do still believe that like not the U.S. dollar, but like the dollar runs kind of what we're doing and why we're doing it and where we're going, you said like a Google will offer these systems for free in exchange for our data, but like at some point the data is diminishing returns. At some point you can't predict human behavior any more accurately, right? There's already so much of our data that's out there. Like how much is a slightly, like if you have a 99.9% picture of what I'm going to do in any situation, how much is an extra 0.0001% predictability on my actions,
but I mean
patterns, my consumerism going to affect a bottom line to the point that like that's still an economic incentive for releasing things for free.
But the thing is, homeless people can't do consumer spending.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, if you want people to keep spending, you're gonna have to give them money, regardless of whether or not they're doing work. If in fact the majority of them are no longer doing work.
But I guess my point is that like, are people going to spend money on these things, right? Like, are people going to continue to spend money and time in digital ecosystems that are less fun? Like, I'm going to use the
I
example.
mean, what are people going to do writ large?
It's a great question.
Let's
But-
start there, because I'm more of the mind that all of these things, all of these notions of value, are getting totally obfuscated, right? So if everybody is focused on some sort of creative enterprise or is in some sort of metaverse world, people are going to have to be distracted by something, right? We're going to have to be plugged into something. All I know is that in the next 2 to 5 years, there's going to be massive, unprecedented disruption.
For sure. I don't know if that, like, the what are people going to be distracted by continues to exist in a digital place. I think that there's already a backlash by young people, right? College age people, not only to AI, but also to like TikTok. TikTok is the perfected social media algorithm. There's a reason that immediately upon TikTok's, growth into like the zenith of, the distraction economy, that Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, like, they all mimicked exactly what TikTok has, right? A running algorithmically generated feed of videos. That is now ubiquitous, right? You cannot get more, as far as I see, I don't think you can get more addictive than TikTok is, right? We have reached a point at least of diminishing returns for social media attention hogging with TikTok, right? At that point, even people who love these products recognize the brain rot that's going on, and they will turn away from those things. The pendulum always swings there, and it always swings back, right? If people start swinging away from, and you look at, like,
But I mean, is it turning away and making them, go to the park instead every single day?
I'm not sure, but
how much of the backlash is virtue signaling versus something of actual substance?
I think it is actually substantive. I mean, I have to think that it's actually substantive, right? Like, I know parents who like new parents who are not letting their children use social media, will not let their children use iPads, won't let their children use any of these things.
But is that a recipe for an adult that's not going to do those things, or is that the opposite?
Well, we don't know.
I feel like it's the opposite.
But when in 5 years, when everything on all these platforms is AI generated and there is no safeguard on that content, it's the same thing as we were talking about before. Every human generated piece of culture is going to be outnumbered 100,000 x to 1 by AI generated things. Are people going to turn away from it, right? It doesn't mean everyone's going to turn away from it, but if 25% of people are no longer using TikTok as their main time suck and are instead like prioritizing anything experiential, anything physically interactive, I don't think that it's like this one-to-one where it's like either they're going to be on TikTok or they're going to be using drugs, but like maybe it is the park, maybe it is, carnivals, maybe it is like food and drink, maybe it is parties. Like, I don't know what these things are necessarily, but it seems like, what's the stat that it's like for the first time in recorded history, like people are drinking less than a certain amount of people are
we're being less alcoholic than
they're not drinking as much as like the previous generation. Like,
but I'll also say the IQ for the first time in history has gone down.
Not drinking enough beer.
Who would have thought that that's what we need to just watch more football and drink more beer in order to regain our lost IQ?
I don't know. I think we're on the verge of digital content, and I'm not talking about like social media, TikTok videos, but like experiential stuff and like games and all these things. They are on the verge of becoming deeper, more complex, more engaging, more interesting than ever before in history, and I don't think that's going to like coincide with some sort of a I don't know, significant mass turning our backs on digital stuff. I think we're at a point in time where there is a lot of passion behind the idea of refusing AI and turning away from AI and touching grass and turning away from digital stuff, but I don't see it being like a real thing that lasts in, even past the next few years, never mind like across generational stuff.
I don't know. I hear your point. I'm not disagreeing with it in principle, but I think that there's an alternative path, because what we still really haven't seen is large scale, I think, socially internalized effects of AI proliferation, right? The mass layoffs have not yet come, right? We are not at the point at which people's across the board, their livelihoods are being directly affected by AI in a way that they can't ignore, right? Even when like a company like Amazon
We're there.
Yeah, but there's still this kind of like veil around it. The Washington Post lays off half of its editorial staff, and it's still disguised as this like cost-cutting mechanism. Their subscriber revenue just isn't there. And Amazon's going to lay off, it was like 10% of their management workforce. Yeah. And it's kind of just it's an economic decision, and it's maybe we can look at, maybe they hired a McKinsey consultant to come in and say, oh, like this is a reduction in workforce will equal this much revenue, when I think that very transparently it is all AI, and at some point that's going to become unignorable. So I don't know if the anti-AI backlash just kind of like ends with mainstream adoption. The crypto backlash hasn't ended in any respect. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the
I mean, there are reasons for that. The crypto part.
Of course, but I just think it's instructive. Like, even with mainstream crypto adoption governmentally and systemically, like, again, there was that video from the Super Bowl where people were watching. You guys saw the Backstreet Boys Coinbase commercial?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about? So there was this commercial, and it was playing the Backstreet Boys, and then this like group of people in a room were like singing along, and then it flashed the Coinbase logo, and they all fucking groaned. And like, so there's still, despite not really anything more negative happening in this ecosystem, it's just the antagonism.
But I mean,
cryptocurrency had calcified, and I don't think mainstream adoption changed that. AI, I think, and a certain antagonism has calcified, and I'm not sure that.
I mean, crypto has been adopted.
But Daim, I think you cut out, or at least you cut out for me.
Yeah.
Daim, whenever you're back, you have the floor. I worry, or I wonder if the positive benefits of AI are ever going to outweigh the negative social costs that now need to be overcome, right? The thing is that, like, the technology no longer just needs to be, great for people to like it. It now needs to be so great that a huge swath of people, and it's not just a left or right issue, a huge swath of people now need to be not only convinced that AI is great, but great enough to overcome their previously held beliefs. All right, we got Daim back.
Sorry. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I think there has in fact been so much negative shit happening, not necessarily in what we might consider the core ecosystem, but with crypto and adjacent to crypto, that I think in the public consciousness, I feel like there's very well reasoned justification for the ongoing negativity there. So personally, I would not necessarily draw lessons from that to the AI stuff, but I don't know. Oh, hello.
I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, I don't know.
We're getting kicked off systematically, one by one. AI is picking us off.
Yep.
I of course, I think you're right. I think that there is definitely, like, these things are not one-to-one. What's the word? One-to-one equatable, but and what I was saying before, Dane, when you were just off, you had jumped off for a second, was that, like, one of the problems with crypto is that there's such and NFTs is another great example. There's such a huge negative feeling that has completely, like, calcified in the public, that these things now need to demonstrate an incredible level of positive value in order to get people to overcome their predispositions. Then AI, I think, is the same thing. And if there are negative, negative consequences, like really unambiguous negative consequences to these things, like mass job loss, like the complete.
Are we overgeneralizing from sort of the Western example though? Because I feel like at least with crypto and NFTs, I don't know if the general Western negativity towards those two technologies is necessarily like closely shared across the world.
That's fair,
right? And I suspect AI might ultimately be similar, and maybe people functioning from economies that are maybe less positioned to be as fully taken over by AI as perhaps Western economies are, might also end up having less negativity towards that.
That's such an interesting point. I honestly, as a denotation of my Western bias, I have never given that a single ounce of thought before, and that is absolutely fascinating. I don't know, Colborn, you're nodding. Do you have any? No, no. Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I don't know where culture seeps out of now. I don't know if like American Western values and tendencies and cultural attitudes are penetrative enough to now kind of just be like taken as the baseline. I guess that was the assumption that I was working off of. So
I mean, I think even apart from like individual cultural factors, I feel like when those big issues we're talking about come, different governments will probably deal differently with it. I'm sure there won't be 200 different solutions out of the nearly 200 different countries around the world, but I'm sure there will be at least a handful of fairly different ways to approach the problem, and I feel like how your government approaches these things and how their solutions affect you for better and for worse will probably play a big part in how you might end up perceiving the involved technologies.
I have to think that that's correct. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know enough about like non-Western economies to have any kind of real input here. You have hit upon the fundamental flaw of this town hall time. Is that?
I mean, I don't think it's a flaw. I think, especially us coming to recognition of that is probably a good thing overall. But I mean, I think a lot of what we're saying is probably pretty accurate and prescient to what's likely to happen on this side of the ocean. But honestly, in my mind, like even what happens on the European side is probably less certain, because I mean, for all its faults, the European Union has like a pretty successful history of using regulation for better or worse to beat down corporate interests. Wouldn't you say, Renee?
Yes, the answer is yes.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, here on this side, I think the big thing that we have to fear is that our governments might well not do a damn thing as long as they see any other alternative that they can take, rather than helping the people. But in other places, there might be a lot less resistance to put up a quick and hard resistance to some of what's going on, and take steps to try to limit the impact of stuff, at least within your own borders. Now, how successful that is going to be, that's another question. But I think it's a positive to be able to look forward to, again, different places coming up with different solutions, because hopefully we'll see which of the approaches actually works, or benefits people more than the other ones. And having that information is, I don't know if it's half the battle, but it's a step in the right direction.
I want to pause this conversation if we can. And I think that Daim, that's a good place to pause on. We're going to come back to this anyway. I wanted to talk about the bat soup yum thing for at least a couple of minutes, because I think it's interesting, and I would like to know your guys' opinions on what's happening with the bat soup yum emerging artist fund / kind of mania around supporting smaller artists, whether it's performative, whether it's net positive for the ecosystem, etc. Colborne, I don't know how much you've been following, or whether you have an opinion on.
I read your article.
What'd you think?
I thought it was a good article.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I don't personally have much opinion. I just don't. I am like so wildly uninterested in what the space has become that it's almost like just encountering just a totally different part of myself. I think it's great that people are out there that there's people out there that want to spend money on emerging artists. I think everything that is like no longer the same. And everything that was exciting to me about what was is no longer exciting to me now.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just hard to reconcile such a massive paradigm shift. And I think people are nervous and scared, so they get excited when there is like some anchor of comfort in what was. Yeah. It just goes, my big question is like, what is going to be valuable moving forward? And
yeah, I mean, it's just, as I wrote in my article, like, it's just this whole thing, and it's not about bat soup yum at all, but it is just an admission from that entire collector class that supporting smaller artists is just not something that anyone was interested in doing at all, right? That the fact that this whole thing needs to even be a conversation means that the high-level collector class of this ecosystem had entirely given up $100,000 over a year for people who are deploying millions and millions of dollars to buy single artworks is just not it's a meaningful amount of money, but it's not a incredible amount of money to put aside for quote unquote emerging artists. All this does is tell the rest of us that for however long that this collector class is calcified at the top, is that there was no money going towards emerging artists, which means the entire idea of discovering new artists and discovering new exciting work and going with the greatest art and finding who has things to say, that all of that was just transparent bullshit. And it has been exactly what we all knew it was and had seen it becoming, which is just like trading pieces from the same 15 artists for 6 and 7 figures and ignoring everybody else like comprehensively.
Just real quick, I've been thinking a lot about just the power shift and the power dynamics and what was exciting and interesting to me. And what was exciting and interesting to me when I came into the space was, one, the fact that artists were buying and supporting and uplifting other artists. Even if it was in small amounts, there was some validation there. Now, that's like an insular crowd. Now people are expecting validation from the outside in the forms whatever. But the amount of like artist bootlicking and terminally online people like groveling instead and giving away the power that was within this collective
Yeah.
to me is just insane. And it does speak to the desperation, and it does speak to the recentering of power and authority away from the collective of crypto art to, I guess, individual tastemakers. And in the beginning,
Yeah.
you know, the big collectors were following the emergent narrative of what the artists were doing in communication with each other, and through various mechanisms and marketplaces and manipulations through that, it's been re-centered around the individual artist and the individual collector, and everything has fallen apart. It's such like a me show
Yeah.
that I don't know. I'm just like, it's just very disappointing and uninteresting to me. And it's not there's nothing that anybody can do because the incentives and everything are just so perverse now.
Yeah, I think you know, you asked, I think, Max, whether it was performative, and I would say, you know, speaking, not trying to speak of intent on behalf of anyone, but like the outcome, what actually happened, what we actually observed, you know, on Twitter, that sure as hell was incredibly performative seeming, and you know, a lot of that is on the other people that joined in, and a lot of that is on the artists that, you know, began immediately fawning and you know, bootlicking and whatever else we want to call it.
Yeah, I mean, if I can, if I can jump on that real quick, like I do want to inoculate in my vision of this, like I want to inoculate Batsup Yum from this to an extent, right? Like I don't think that I don't believe that this was like a coordinated effort for Batsup Yum specifically to become this kind of like icon, but I do think that a lot of these, like you said, Daim, a lot of these like collectors and artists who started like jumping in to offer, you know, $10, $12, $20,000, right? Sam Spratt offering $20,000. Oh, I'm going to join the fund and I'm going to collect some work from artists. It's like, where was that fucking 20,000? Like, have you not been putting any money towards supporting this ecosystem? Has, you know, Redbeard offering what, $12,000? Like, what the fuck were you doing with your $12,000 before? Like, what was the point? What were you doing with this money previously? Black Dove, the platform that just bought Foundation, saying like, oh, we'll feature all these emerging artists on our homepage. Like, what were you going to feature on the homepage? Like, if this didn't happen, what was the fucking plan to use this money for? Right? Was it literally just that it was going to be held?
They would have waited for another guy to start something fashionable seeming.
Yeah, I don't understand what all these collectors and platforms were doing if they weren't collecting and they weren't platforming. Like, what was the alternative goal? If there was no Batsup Yum who came forward and said, I actually want to support these emerging artists, whatever the intent was, right? Still offered.
But I mean, that's the thing, right? There always is a Batsup Yum these days. Whether that's Batsup Yum, whether that's, you know, somebody masquerading as a Medici, you know, whoever else. Like these sort of announcements are pretty regular now, and they always elicit the same sort of response and attention. Now this one got, you know, outsized amounts of attention, maybe because it was the first in 2026, and you know, this is the time for everybody to be making, you know, grand plans and grand announcements. But like somebody else would have come along. I will agree with you. Or
not like it's scorched earth. Nothing is working here, right? So, you know, if a patron wants to go and support, you know, artists, that's great. That should always be celebrated. It doesn't matter the amount of money. If somebody has, it's great. But we have to like ground up, rethink everything because nothing is working.
Yeah. and the Betsupium announcement didn't like I don't think what the original announcement said had to have become what it became, right? Like if our community had reacted differently, if other people who joined the bandwagon had reacted differently, like this all could have had a very different feel. And just one more quick thing I want to say before I forget, because it's been on my mind for a while. I hear what you were saying earlier with there being no genuine support for small artists or emerging artists, but I would add that genuine stuff aside, sort of the public or I don't know, projected or presented focus from the biggest collectors, I feel like has historically always been on either already made artists or on sort of supposed positioned emerging artists who were just discovered. And whether or not that was genuine or whether those people were sort of picked for, I don't know, for being elevated by the cabal or whatever else, doesn't even matter. But at the end of the day, if you have an ecosystem where the only people who are worth attention and worth collecting art from are emergent artists and proven blue chips, that tells me two things. Number one, it's not about the art. Number two, most emerging artists are not going to end up being blue chips. They're going to end up starving.
Completely. I want to just momentarily just highlight some of the comments we've had in terms of this discussion, because I think that they're instructive. So just bear with me. I'm just going to go through the last couple. Matt Kane mentioned that $100,000 could buy around 1,400 NFTs in 2019. So obviously the scope of quote unquote supporting an emerging artist is much different. I think what Bat Soup said was like he was going to spend 1 ETH a month or somewhere about 1 ETH a month to support artists. Even though that doesn't lead up to $100,000, but either way, it might have again been easier to. I mean, Colborne, you would know this better than anyone. Renee, you as well. Probably Dame, you as well. Anybody here would know this better than I. But
I think Matt Kane just wanted to type 420. I don't understand this. NFTs were cheaper than that, but doesn't matter. I mean, I would love to see. Just personally, I have no fucking clue what Batsupium has already bought. Right? I would love for him to spend $100,000, like putting on exhibitions of his own collection, or celebrating the artists he's already collected. There is none of that, right? Yeah. I get that, like buying work is a primacy, and we have for years chased like getting collectors to build online exhibitions and celebrate what's already been done, and there is like none of that. That to me feels more important in a way. Like we need to go back and begin to validate to people what has happened and why, not just throw more money at something that is already broken.
There's no capital in that anymore, right? There's social capital in like doing the 010 thing that Eli Scheinman did at Art Basel, right? And getting all these extraneous publications to come in and, drool over a fucking Beeple piece. There is social capital in like a museum exhibition at like a real physical museum where it seems like you're, coming for the current structures of power. There's social capital to be gained from like owning a really sought after expensive piece, but finding something in the, finding a diamond in the rough and saying, look how fucking cool this is. Look how like beautiful this piece is. I found this first. Like for whatever reason, there's no social capital in that anymore.
Much less when it's, a crypto artwork that, you bought 4 or 5 years ago and that hasn't appreciated to being worth $100,000.
Yeah.
Which again, like clearly not about the art.
I want to wrap up here. I do just want to again mention the last couple of comments. Andre Stelvecchio mentioned that Claire Silver provides out of her own pocket.
Una comment. You got to highlight your Una comment, bro.
All right. Thank you, Una.
Don't we all?
Well, I was going to let the sleeping dogs lie there, but Andres just mentioned that Claire Silver supports artists out of their own pocket quietly, and then mentions that the collector class plays follow the leader very often, which I think I love Claire Silver. Just another, rose in her belt. And the last thing I want to touch on is what Emotional said here, which is having no urge to beg in the timeline when everyone already had to do that, or having already had to do that, rather spend time building out a project or a game than try and catch the eyes of collectors that don't care about me. And I think that we can end on that because, all of this is undignified. Begging on the timeline for attention and for money, it takes one's dignity away. I mean, we don't want to have to be beggars, right? Artists shouldn't have to be beggars, and it shouldn't have to be this choice between creating work to appease a higher class or a more economically fortunate class and selling one's kind of dignity, or being an artist. That's not what we want to create here. That's not what we want to foment as an attitude.
That is not the crypto art revolution.
No, it's not interesting, and it's sad, and I think that there's a lot of reason to turn away from something like this, because I think it's a lot more noble and honorable to to just create work that's meaningful for you, that has no hope of selling, than creating work that's meaningful for one or two people and begging for their attention on the timeline. It takes one's dignity away as an artist. And if we're taking artists' dignity away even more than we were, there's one thing in not paying attention to people.
Real quick, it's almost my problem with Beeple, and Bad Soup Yum was a huge proponent of crypto dick butts, and we kind of came full circle in that we were giving a lot of humor to memes. It kind of started with earnest, with a lot of money, and then just really fell off a cliff. And now we're on the other side of glorifying almost the nothingness. And it's hard to go from being, I think, just personally as the branded spokesperson for crypto dick butts to saying that you're gonna start taking emerging artists seriously. And I get that it's kind of funny and good, and we should have fun while we're doing this, but it's hard to have both. And crypto was great because crypto art was great because there was almost a sense of humor and playfulness, but we took it too far to the extreme, and now we're trying to swing the pendulum back and be taken seriously, and we're just and
it's not working.
Well, if I can add on top of that, what always happens, or what has happened in art movements since the 70s, when these contemporary art prices skyrocketed to these egregious sums of money, is that it no longer became enough to justify the cost that a work of art was good, because there were many good works of art. What needed to be justified was that it was brilliant or genius in a way that only a few people could possibly do or comprehend. And so that's why you have, in my estimation, a lot of kind of lay people turned away from modern contemporary art, because you would see a fucking chair, and that chair would sell for $3.5 million because of some fucking genius innovation, a curved ball, I don't know, something. I think even when I go to MoMA or something, and I see work by Frank Stella, it's these maybe it's not Frank Stella I'm thinking of. Oh, here's a good example: the Jasper Johns American flag, right? That I think sold for what, $200 million, something like that. The only way you can justify paying $200 million for a work of art at all is that it's genius. And when we have works in crypto art by X Copy selling for $7 million and Sam Spratt selling for $3 million, it just being good art isn't enough. We have to elevate these people into the level of genius, into the level of icon, and the necessity of taking ourselves, or those people taking themselves so seriously, becomes a crucial part of the value proposition. It can't be a joke, because a joke will never be worth that much, but something that is iconic or brilliant in a level that nobody else can match, that's suddenly worth however many figures we're working with here. And so as the scale gets commensurately higher, the thing is forced to take itself more and more seriously. I think a lot of Warhol's career was a reaction to that same thing happening to him. The very fact that you had like Campbell's soup cans painted, and those are in MoMA, and that they're all priceless, is itself a commentary on the fact that like that artistic valuation is ridiculous. But what can you do? Especially because I don't think that level of crypto art, or that level of crypto artist, has any interest in like making themselves into a joke for the sake of whether that's fairness, whether it's egalitarianism, whether it's just to maintain the cultural attitude. They can only maintain themselves, and this thing can only maintain itself at the level that it's reached if these things are taken uber seriously.
But that's the people problem, no? Like, you can't bring AI dog shit and have it be anything other than AI dog shit. Or is it, or the Catalan banana on the wall, we're so far over our skis for anything meaningful anymore that I really welcome just everything getting totally supplanted and rewritten. And I think we just have to embrace that and stop trying to hold on to anything and everything that worked before.
We need a new flood.
I just want to bring up, before we go, one piece, a 1961 anti-artwork by Piero Manzoni called Artist's Shit.
Is it what it sounds like?
It's a can of the artist shit.
And then there was the NFT guy that was also shitting in a can and selling it at Sotheby's.
Well, that sounds derivative.
It was.
Anyways, perhaps we should kick off.
But I think that's the problem, is that everything is derivative. I don't know. We're stuck. We're so stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe one of these emerging artists will get us unstuck.
Let's go, Batsu.
Yeah, come on.
Get to work.
Or the OG crypto artists. You never know.
Well, unfortunately, they've already emerged, so they can't qualify for a foundation.
I think they might be okay with that.
Yeah, probably. Well, thank you, Colborne. It's great to have you back. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Daim. Thank you all for dealing with my prolonged absence. Thank you, Andres. Thank you, Emotional. Thank you, Una. Thank you, Matt Kane, for being in the chat with us. This was great, and we're looking forward to doing it next week. And we'll see you all at the same time, 12 p.m. EST on Thursday. So long, and go support an emerging artist.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.